Hello and welcome to another episode of the BFG podcast. Today I am here with Rod Emmerson, the editorial cartoon editor for the New Zealand Herald. Welcome, Rod.
Hi,
Glad to
Blake.
have you
How
on
are
the show
you?
today.
Thank you for inviting me onto your podcast.
Now, I've had a look at some of your accolades and research for this interview, and I see you've won a whole lot. And I can't remember them all off the top of my head. There's just so many. So can you start by telling the viewers some of your highlights?
Uh, well, yeah, I have won a few awards, which is, that's nice. It's an acknowledgement that your work is being appreciated. But I think any highlight for a cartoonist is what's called the fridge door collection, where someone cuts your cartoon out of the paper or prints it they download it and put it on the fridge. Or you walk into a shop somewhere and they've got one of your cartoons up on the wall somewhere. That to me is a highlight of of my profession, because it means that your work is resonating with readers.
Okay, so as you know, I've got made lots of friends on my journey of starting this podcast within your industry. Sean Yo, who we've had on the show before, and I've just done an interview with the children's author, Peter Millett, as well recently. So I'm getting quite good at your field now. So have you got any? I'll ask the same question I've asked them. Have you got any career highlights in terms of celebrity endorsements or anything like that? Have you met anyone really highly famous or
Oh,
anything?
yes, there's a few of those, I guess. In my early days, this is going back a fair way. I was the president of the Australian Cartoonists Association, and I'd been to a few conferences in the US, but the first one I went to was in San Diego, and this was known as the Rubens Awards.
Yeah.
And I went with a group of cartoonists, and I met all my heroes from my childhood heroes, the artists behind Peanuts and Schultzy, the the just the Mad magazine cartoonists.
Yes.
There's just so many, and it was nice to be in the one room with them. And in fact, one of the first I met was Mort Drucker, who was when I was growing up, he was my hero because he was a fantastic illustrator, and he could capture a face in very simple line work. Now, it's not an easy. It looks simple, but it's not. But he had a wonderful way of capturing the features of a face, and myself and hundreds and hundreds of people around the world always loved his work. And I met him that night at the dinner, and then I was chatting to another chap who goes by the name of Jerry Robinson, and he wanted to meet me in the foyer the next morning and he'd go through my portfolio. And I did have a selection of work with me at the time, and because I knew that they wouldn't be aware of what I drew.
Yeah.
And so I met up with this chap, Jerry Robinson, and it turns out that he was running a syndicate in the States, and at the time it was called the Cartoonist and Writer Syndicate, but it's now known as the I think it's the New York Times International Syndicate. And
Yes.
and Jerry, when I was completely unaware of this, he was one of the Sunday cartoonists for the Batman strip.
Right. That's big. That is
And
really big.
he is renowned for creating the Joker. And I found all this out later. But he was fabulous. He gave me an awful lot of encouragement, and he wanted to take my work on instantly. And it was all done on a handshake. And so in those days, everything was done by fax machines. So I would send anything on an international flavour across to Jerry, and he would then run it through his syndicate, which included, some of the major papers around the United States, but then across international borders as well to, lots of papers in Europe. So my readership just exploded because of that. And, I maintained that for many, many years. In fact, until I moved here to New Zealand some 18 years ago. And Jerry died a few years back, but his son has taken over the syndicate. So I'm still, I still send them work occasionally. But it's not because of the digital world now. It's the whole demographics of print media has changed completely. So you can draw something that has a readership here in New Zealand, but once it goes online, it can someone riding horseback in Oregon can read it at the same time. So your readership, it just explodes, and you have to keep that in mind because the playing field has changed fundamentally for media, and it's a good thing. It'd be terrible if it stayed the same.
Do you find it like really drained almost that like your career has also gone or almost like gone backwards and like your career, like you got a break when you were really young and now you're sort of here in a small little country like New Zealand just working on a local newspaper?
Not at all. At the time, I was actually looking at a move to the United States, and just by sheer coincidence, I was coming over here to New Zealand for a conference, and I had correspondence out of the blue from the editor-in-chief of the New Zealand Herald, and who wanted to have a meeting. And at that meeting, he offered me a position here, but told me to go away and think about it. Now, this happened, it took about nearly 2 years for it to actually come about. But, it's New Zealand, the New Zealand Herald is the national publication. And
Right.
and of course, not forgetting that New Zealand, even though it's a small country, it punches way above its weight internationally on the global stage.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I thought, this looks pretty good. And, I've thoroughly enjoyed it. So, no, it was definitely not a step backwards. And I would never see it as that.
So if you do political, your work around politics, I'll ask you another question that I asked Sean. So do you ever get responses from like politicians or people connected to politicians with your work?
Yes.
So say like Jacinda Ardern or Bishop Chris Hipkins and the like.
Yes, always. The thing with this quirky profession is that even, the thing with satire, humor and satire, it's always at someone's expense. So not everyone laughs. And I do take that on board. But so if a politician is the subject of a cartoon, and excuse me for a minute, because I've got a little puppy here who's at my feet, demanding a bit of attention. So the vast majority of politicians that I've drawn over the years have, in some form, made contact, and they've collected the cartoon or a copy of the cartoon, which is fine. And it's not necessarily in their favour either. So I don't have a problem with that. There's been quite a few. I'm not going to name who they are, but they always make contact through the back channels of social media.
Yeah.
And we keep it personal and private, and well, I like to keep Wellington at arm's length. I don't think it's healthy for me to, I wouldn't want to be working in Wellington where you get to be a bit chummy with the politicians. I think there's a bit of danger there. I prefer to work remotely and look at my work from the reader's perspective, rather than someone that's actually in Parliament, walking around the corridors of Parliament.
So I've had a personal or different experience with Parliament. To tell you a little bit about my background, I do a bit of disabled advocacy for people with disabilities, and I work with them on different projects, of course, when the restrictions allow, and share my ideas with them. And I'm trying to get into media, so I won't name them for privacy as well, but I've got made a few friends within the media industry, and continue to make them as well. So it's pretty cool to be able to do that.
Yes, yeah, it is. I don't. I think it's important for me not to get chummy, not to get friendly. Once they're out of politics, yes, I do know a few politicians, former politicians, and I'll drink with them and go to parties and all that sort of stuff. But I like to maintain my independence.
Yeah, that's understandable. And
Yeah.
I try and do that to a degree too. But I do have similar relationship to what you have as well. So,
Yeah.
to some of them.
And so you should too, because you know, you have let's see, your advocacy needs to be brought to their attention, and the better the relationship that you can build, whether they're in opposition or whether they're actually sitting ministers, it's very important for you, and all luck to you for doing it.
Mm-hmm. And I'll ask you if you get the same. I get a lot of, I guess not backlash, but a few comments from our friends saying, why are you friends with XYZ politician? I bet they're doing it just because they feel sorry for you and because of your disability. And I said, well, I as soon as XYZ became friends, I asked them, please don't be my friend just because I have a disability. I want a genuine friendship in and outside on a professional basis and a personal basis. I'm not looking for any, special treatment.
No, and good for you.
And and that's how I get my, and I still to this day I get a lot of backlash from people because I'm friends with certain people within the sector.
Yeah.
And that's always hard. So I wanted to ask you, do you receive anything similar? Are you quite lucky in that respect that people are quite open to you being friendly with them?
Yeah. I get accused of being a Labourite, and I get accused of being, a National Party stooge. So when you're getting it from both sides, I must be doing something right.
Mm.
So it doesn't bother me what people, because people don't know you, right?
Me
All
neither.
they know you is by the cartoon, so they don't know you personally, and they draw their judgments that way, and it doesn't bother me the perceptions that people build. I've been accused of being one of the funniest ones. I once had a plane towing a sign that said the cartoonist is brain dead. I've had I had my through the gun debate in Australia. I had my effigy cut out and hung in a tree in Ipswich. I've had phone threats. People saying, we know where you live. When you least expect it, we're going to break both your arms and legs. May not be today, may not be tomorrow, could be in a week.
So it's safe to say that we've both had, I haven't had the death threats or anything like that.
But,
yeah.
That only means that I'm hitting the right buttons.
I mean, I find that in my, because I've just started this whole podcasting, I find that so far I got good comments, but in terms of my connection into the politics industry, I notice that there's a lot of stigma and a lot of jealousy, is how I would word it.
Yes, that would be right.
As soon as they find out that you've got a connection within the industry, you get judged, which is not a good look.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
people are entitled to form opinions, but they mostly uninformed opinions, aren't they?
I mean, and with you being an Australian native, do you have any friends on the Australian side?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I know the Australian political cartoon industry very well, but I also know over the years I've built good, strong connections with the Americans and with Canadians, um, and and also in the UK. So, I mean, it's a very small world, cartooning, and you need to have that connection with like-minded artists. Quite important. So, you know, and of course I also have a good network with New Zealand cartoonists as well, which is very important. So we all, you know, you need to have
And
a hub, don't you?
yeah. And do you have any other favorite moments in your career, like all the awards you won and the nominations you've got? Do you have a favorite award night from a favorite year, or?
Yes, yeah, I do. I actually do. Um, I mean, there's apart from the traditional media awards, um, one of the cartoonists in Canada um, started an award um, 6 or 7 years ago. There was a bunch of us sitting around in a bar in San Francisco at a conference, and he had this ring on his finger,
Yeah.
and it was made up of skulls,
Oh dear.
right? And I think his had something like 10 skulls on it. And his wife had it made for him after something like 40 or 50 years of service as a
Right.
cartoonist. But it represented all his editors. And we were all amazed by this ring. And a couple of years go by, and all of a sudden, he gets a few of them made and decides to present one annually to cartoonists. To present one
Oof.
to cartoonists who he considers have contributed to the industry over the years. And the inaugural one he presented to me at a conference in Sacramento a couple of years later. And then subsequently, Ann Talnays, I think, at the Washington Post, and Kevin Kelleher at the Economist. They've been recipients as well. So I was quite chuffed to get that, because you get that one from your peers, and especially coming from the Canadians. You know, they're a good bunch of guys.
Shall we talk about your dog a bit so it doesn't feel left out?
Sorry,
Can we talk about your dog a bit so he or she
my
doesn't feel
dog.
the video?
My dog,
Yeah.
right here. This one.
Yes. How did you? So, are you a big fan of dogs? You know, did you acquire that when you came? Have you had quite a few when you came here?
Yeah. This guy's name is Bo, and he's only what 3 months. What are you? 3 months old, mate? Um, he's my third Cavalier. So I
Uh,
like them. They're they're almost a lap dog, you know, very friendly, and they like a lot of attention. So if I put him down now, he'd start howling.
Yeah.
He's a bit of a sook.
They're like that at that age.
I've had dogs pretty well all my life, so you know, it's nice to have a buddy like that at your feet while you're drawing.
The good thing I enjoy about recording these interviews, and that you'll see, and because people that are watching this right now, because by the time you see this, it'll be on YouTube and what have you. You can always adapt as your a bit of behind the scenes thing for the viewers here. You can always adapt as you're going along.
Yes.
So if the dog comes in, like today, as we're filming, the dog has come into the frame. So I always try and adapt my interviews around what's going on. So
I remember doing having a Zoom interview with Steve Brodner, who was quite a well-known illustrator and cartoonist with Rolling Stone magazine and a whole bunch of others. And we were talking about sort of surviving in a digital world. And this is all coming together for a conference presentation that I was putting on in Australia. And, and Steve and I are chatting, and all of a sudden I could hear this dog in the background. And I said, mate, have you got a dog there? He said, absolutely. And he pulls up this gorgeous little wire terrier thing. And I said, well, hang on a minute. I'll see you and I'll raise you one. And I bet that, and I picked up mine who was sitting at my feet. He's now passed on, that little fella. But so the four of us had an interview. The dogs got to know each other online.
So you never know what you're going to get right here on the BFG podcast.
Well, that's right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Who knows? Maybe I'll end up like the BBC one day. And
Exactly.
end up with children walking in to the interview. I'm still a bit young to have any of my own, but maybe someone I'm interviewing will have the children or something.
Oh, well, pets are easier than children.
Yeah. So you've going back to what we were saying earlier, you've got no politicians and stuff. What about any other New Zealand celebrities, like any TV show people? And how do you get your work? How do you get inspiration from your work? Are you one of those drawers or illustrators, whatever you want to call it, that watch the news every night and get ideas, or do you watch particular TV shows?
No, I like to keep a low profile and let my work speak for itself. I don't like to become the story. I think that's a wrong way to present yourself as a cartoonist, because essentially, I mean, I follow the stories. I don't want to become the story, and also for my own personal security and my own personal space, I stick a lot to myself. But yes, I do have, I have friends and acquaintances. This is one of the beauties of what you do, because it's so unusual. You get to meet people from all walks of life. So, I do know people that have had long careers in politics. I'm not without naming them, and I know people in the Defence Force, and the Police Force, and all essential services of Fire Brigade, right through to just, normal everyday folk. And it's quite a wide circle of people. And I don't necessarily agree with their politics, and they may not necessarily agree with my stand, but I mean, we're mature enough or old enough to, to still maintain a relationship. You're not going to let any of that stuff get in the way, are you?
As we were saying earlier, it's your choice to do what you need to do,
Yeah. I have, I have a good circle of friends that we all have varying perspectives on life and politics, and sometimes we'll sit and argue for an hour, and then but it's not going to interfere with a friendship, not at all.
So, do you have any particular? And the reason I asked this is because Sean did. Do you have any particular image or anything you have done that has done well? Because he obviously had that Kiwi image that went around the world during the the peak of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Have you had something similar? Because he was.
I've had quite a few. Yeah. It's a bit hard to put a finger on any one. I guess
what
probably.
About a favorite?
I think it's all about timing these days, because the world is such a small place, and news doesn't run 9 to 5. There were 3 things happening in the world that were completely unrelated, but they're all happening within a couple of days of each other. And I'm just trying to remember what they were. I think one was the tennis, right? Yeah. So when you're linking unrelated stories, there's it's like anything. There's always a connection somewhere. You just have to find it. So one of these was Putin meeting Trump. Novak had just won Wimbledon, and I've forgotten what the other one was. It was a big. Oh, it was the. Was it the women's basketball, netball? I think it was. I think New Zealand won the.
Yeah, I know what you mean. One of them.
Yeah. So essentially, between those 3 stories, the common factor is a trophy. So I drew, in the first panel, I'm pretty sure it was the women's netball, holding up the world trophy. And then the second one was Novak holding up the Wimbledon trophy. And in the third one, I had Putin holding up Trump.
Wow. And did that get featured on
that just went nuts. And of course, what happened was that because of New Zealand's position geographically, it was just coming into, when that was published, it was just coming into, it was what would have been, it was evening, morning, so it would have been evening in Europe. And just as this meeting with Trump had, the meeting with Putin and Trump had just finished. And so I was pretty well the first cartoonist to actually do that subject. And so it went nuts online. And thousands and thousands. It ended up on television in Europe. It was seen on television in South America, in Latin America, and it was online right through the States and Canada. It just went crazy, and it was just purely because of timing. Because I was able to be the first person, because New Zealand's always the first out of bed globally, isn't it? With the way the news runs on a daily basis. So yeah, I'm quite happy with that one. There's been a few of those, and sometimes you're sitting there drawing a political cartoon, and you think, well, this is going to take off, and it doesn't.
And did that make you feel good that it was
being viewed in
different countries?
Well, you never know. You never know what's going to happen. To be perfectly honest, you can't sit there and decide, right, well, this cartoon that I'm about to draw is going to take the world by storm. It's not going to happen that way. It's just that's decided by the readers, whether the readers that see it either digitally or in print. And it's a pleasant surprise to see one take off. And Sean's, I think it was Weeping Kiwi one, that. We've all the cartoonists have at least one or two cartoons that will just go nuts for a particular reason.
And Sean, if you're watching, because I know you watch these later on when it's up, but he was saying that he got contacted by a French outlet for his one in the middle of the night, almost, trying to get an interview, and I hope if you're watching, Sean, I hope you don't mind me sharing that, but because he watches these, so.
Oh yeah, good on him.
You might be watching.
Yeah, we all get those. I don't get phone calls in the middle of the night because I have a silent number. But yes, it's quite rewarding, and it's a pleasant reward because you more often than not you're not anticipating it to happen at all. But the main thing is that what you're creating is a cornerstone of history. You're creating this visual cornerstone, and so you take that on board every day. You sit down behind the pen. Yeah, this little doggy here is perched on the sofa. Hang on. Get off there, mate. Come on. Let's sit here.
As we wrap up here, because I can see you're busy with your dog, is there how can people find you on social media and stuff?
Well, I'm pretty well out there on Twitter. They'll find me on Twitter, or on Instagram. But you'll get me at the New Zealand Herald website. We're a paywall. All my daily work gets put behind a paywall because someone has to pay for it. Journalism isn't free. Good journalism isn't free.
Mm-hmm.
But I do put work out on a fairly regular basis. I might put 1 or 2 out a week on social media as a kite, just to remind people that if you like this work, this is where you'll find it, and follow the link in my bio, which will take you to the Herald website. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, so nzherald.co.nz, you'll see my work there, and on Instagram and Twitter. But I tend to avoid Facebook these days. It's a bit of a hornet's nest.
Yeah. Well, to everyone watching, I hope you enjoyed this interview, and thank you, Rod, for coming on. If you can just stay with me, but to the viewers, I'll just say goodbye, and we'll see you on the next episode. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the notification bell.